pace was right. Who felt like the pace was right on. A few people that weren't here, welcome if you're joining us for the first time. And I appreciate folks are adding some just open-ended comments there underneath at the top there. That's great. One other thing too, Rachel, you might show them at the bottom of this document. We have a space at the very bottom. There's a space for folks to add their contact information. If you were here last week, you don't need to add your contact information again. That's fine. We've got that. But if you're just joining us today for the first time, feel free to add your name and email and your affiliation down there, just so that we have a sense of who's joining us for these pre-hackathon trainings. So yeah, I think, maybe leave this up for another minute or so, Rachel, and then I think we can probably hand it over to Eric, and I think Elsa are going to get us started for the first 30 minutes or so, as I understand it. And then we'll have the last 90 minutes of the day to hear from Sibeli and Ty from our analytics team to talk about data cubes and how to access and work with data cubes. We've also got a link to the pre-hackathon training webpage on that Google Doc that we have up there. And I'll put a link to our pre-hackathon training webpage in the chat as well, that has links to lots of resources that we'll be using throughout today's training. We'll have a couple of comments about perhaps a couple of the things that aren't rendering properly right now, and we'll point you to a markdown or another place to see those. But that link that I just put in the chat is a link to our webpage. So cool. I think, Rachel, we're ready to move on to the first part of the training. Ty and Eric and Elsa, Sibeli, what do our instructors think? You feeling ready to go?
And I have a quick announcement too. For those of you who are attending the hackathon, you should have received an email this morning for the pre-hackathon survey. So be on the lookout for that. And then if you haven't received it, you can send me a message as well. And I want to welcome those people too who are here just for the training too. So this one was open to everyone. So welcome everyone. All right.
All right. Let me just give you the roadmap of where we're going to go today. So the first half hour is going to be a review from last week. So you may have remembered this little note, but I think some of you who emailed, this was probably the problem. When we shut down the instance from last week, that erases the whole key pairing that we did. And so when you go and start up a new instance, we have to go and do that whole key pairing afresh, anew with a new key. And so maybe if you try to do that with your old key, that could have caused some problems or some other things. So anyways, we're going to spend the first half hour reviewing how to do that. We also last time didn't get quite through pushing your data back to GitHub. So in that first half hour, we're going to try to make sure to get you all wrapped up and back and that sort of process finished. And then we'll jump over and do a deep dive into data for the remaining of the time. All right, so I'm going to pass it off to, I think Elsa is going to take us back. Elsa or Eric, I don't know which one of you wants to go first. To do some of that review.
Yeah, I'm gonna nominate Eric to go first so that we can get authentication all set up again.
Great. Okay, so the first step is going to be to go to Cybers again, and for anybody that wasn't here last week and who does not have a Cybers account, you will need to sign up for one. So let me put the link in the chat here. It's going to be user.cybers.org. And once you go there, again, if you have an account from last week, go ahead and log in. If you don't, you should see the option to create an account. Let me share my screen here.
When you create an account, you want to associate yourself with this workshop.
Yes. Yep. If you can remember which email you provided us for your registration, please sign up with the same email. And then let's actually go here. And if you haven't yet, if you weren't here last week and you still need to enroll, I'll give everyone a few seconds to create an account first. But once your account is created, you're going to want to enroll for the workshop here. I just put the link in the chat. And wait a few moments for everybody to catch up.
So just while people are thinking, there are actually two different Cyverse websites that you're going to go to. You're going right now into the sort of user management portal where you sign up for sign up for your user account, make sure you're attached to the website or attached to the workshop. But then we're going to go to a separate Cyverse website that actually houses all of the virtual machines. So last week there was some confusion where people were trying to do one thing on one website instead of go to the other one. Eric will guide you there. There was a silence and I thought I'd give some people some context.
Yes, Tyler. Yeah, we will be accepting any incoming requests to enroll. Okay, is anyone having any issues up to this point? Oh, yeah, sorry. Keep forgetting to increase the size of my screen here. Okay. Okay. Any issues? If not, I'm gonna move on to getting into the Jupyter Hub or the Jupyter Lab so that we can start with the SSH keys. The next thing you're going to want to do is on the left side here of the Cyverse user portal, you should see services. Press on the services tab, you should see discovery environment. And you're going to want to click launch. That's going to take you to what Ty was talking about, a separate domain. It's going to be DE for discoveryenvironment.cyverse.org.
Tyson just put that link in the chat for anybody that needs it.
Okay, and once you're in the discovery environment, this is where we can launch all sorts of different applications. And for the hackathon, we will be using the Earth Lab.
Could I make one note real quick, Eric?
Yeah.
For those
Yep.
of you that came straight to this website, you might be logged out again. So see at the top right, it says E, Eric with a green. That means he's logged in. Mine has a T with a green, but you might still have an unlogged, you might be logged out. So if you're logged out, click on that, put in your credentials, and you'll actually get into the system.
Yep. Yep, and once you're logged in, you should be able to go again on the left side to apps, and you should see this list of applications.
Can you make the font bigger?
Yep. I'll try to. There we go. Okay, so once you see this list of applications, you're going to want to choose Jupyter Lab, Earth Lab from the list. And the version should be Hackathon 2023. Once you have that, you will be able to name your analysis. I usually keep it as a default, but you can name it whatever you'd like, barring any special characters. I think see underscores are fine. Keep the output folder the same. And then you're just going to go to next. Here you can configure the hardware for the virtual machine. So you can say, for this, let's just go with 4 minimum CPU cores. Minimum memory will go with 8. and minimum disk space 32 should be just fine. You can leave maximum CPU cores blank for now. So once you have this all set, go ahead and go to next. You should be on step 3 now, review and launch. And to launch the analysis, go ahead and all the way on the right, in the bottom right here, just click this launch analysis button. And I've already launched this application, so you should see a screen after you've launched it that looks very much like this. It's going to take a few moments for it to provision and start up, but once you get to this screen, so you'll click launch analysis right here, and then this screen will pop up. And then you're going to want to click go to analysis. And once you click this, a loading bar will probably come up showing you the progress as it provisions the application. Yeah, Tyson, can you explain a little bit more about the create? Okay, thanks. Yeah, Tyson,
yeah, so the saved launches are the way that Eric just set the minimum number of CPUs and the RAM. With other apps and Cybers, you can also add data when you launch them. And so we're setting up these parameters or configuration environment variables. And if you wanted to create a saved launch, that would save those specific variables for you as a unique URL. And you can even create like a badge for a web page. We're just launching an app today, so there's no need to go and create a saved launch to make it a little bit faster next time.
Yep, and it's going to take a few moments to load, so don't worry if it's starting up for a little bit here. Once it's done loading, though, you will see a Jupyter Lab interface like this. Let me try to make this larger. And we're going to be using these applications today. So I'll wait a little bit. I'll wait till the loading is done for a lot of people.
Eric, could you go back to your discovery environment and just want to explain a couple of things. I think everybody in the workshop has access to only 2 running applications concurrently. So if Eric clicks on his analyses tab, he's launching another app there. That's fine. So the hamburger menu on the left there, if Eric, can you click on the 3 bars at the top? So when you open it up, you can see what all those icons mean. So if he clicks on analyses, you can see he has 2 analyses that say submitted. If you try to start more than 2 apps at a time, you may get an error. So you're only allowed to start so many apps on your current account. We can change that in the future. But this is where you'll see that your apps are running or stopped.
Yep, so you can see the Jupyter Lab, Earth Lab, Analysis 1 is running right now, and I have the option to terminate it. But... Okay, so has anybody successfully loaded the Jupyter Lab interface yet? Just some indication in the chat if you have. Okay, cool. Sweet.
How about folks that are struggling? You have some people that are not getting it.
Okay.
See a lot of thumbs up, which is really nice.
Yeah.
Could you talk real quick about, I saw there was a version for Hackathon 2023. Does this mean that we could go back to this same container at some point?
Yes. When you're launching a new Discovery Environment app, you will be able to come back to this Hackathon 2023. It's going to have all the packages that we use today and throughout the hackathon already pre-installed. So, and you can see there's, I believe latest and Hackathon 2023 for now will be the same because Hackathon 2023 is the latest version. But you could go back to 3.5, for instance, if there was some packages you wanted there. But yes, you will be able to return and reuse this container later
That's
on down
awesome.
the road. And
So I would have everybody note that for themselves, because in 2 years or 3 years or 10 years, when you want to go back and run the code that you developed in the hackathon, and it's not working because technology has moved on, you should be able to go back to this and it should have this encapsulation of all the software in the state that it was at when you did the hackathon, and all of your software should be able to run and you could build it again.
Yep. Okay, so let's configure our GitHub SSH key pair. So when you're dealing with private repositories or repositories that you own on GitHub, you can no longer use a username and password to authenticate with GitHub for pushing and pulling private repos. You have to add one option, and the easiest option is to add an SSH key pair. So that's what we're going to do right now. This SSH key pair, it's 2 files that you're going to create on the virtual machine that you just spun up on Cybers. You're going to transfer one of these files to GitHub. That's going to allow you to transfer your private repositories back and forth. Yeah, so you can only have 2 analyses running at a time. So if it's telling you that your job limit was reached, you'll just need to terminate one of your running instances before you create a new
Go back
one.
and show that. I know you just showed this a couple minutes ago, but people are probably staring at their own computers. Could you show that step one more time?
Yeah, for the so on the left side, if you need to manage the jobs that you have running, you press on this menu here and then go down to analyses. You will see all of your completed and currently running analyses. So on the right side here, any of your running analyses will have this red terminate button, and you can click that to terminate before you provision another application. Okay. Cool. So, all right, so this is the point where things are going to get a little bit more complicated, so I'll try to go at a correct pace, but please follow along here and be sure to ask any questions if you start to fall behind. So this Jupyter Lab has a Git extension here on the left side of the toolbar. So when you're in your home folder, so before you do anything, go to your file browser and just click this little folder here a couple times. It'll take you all the way back up in the file structure. And then go ahead and click on home. So you're here. And then go ahead and press on your username. Okay, so you should be in your home folder before you start doing anything. If anyone from last week already went ahead with some stuff and they went in their home folder, it's not a big deal. It'll still work, but this is where we're going to start today. So once you're there, you can go to the Git extension. It's the third one down. And you should see these buttons. Open the file browser, initialize a repository, and clone a repository. So we're going to want to click clone a repository. And the first thing we're going to do is clone this public repository. which is going to give us some code that allows us to create an SSH key pair.
That was too small for anybody to read. You might need to
Oh.
give the link in the chat for people.
Yep. Sorry. Yep. I'll put the link in the chat right now. Okay, so the link I just put in the chat is the link to the Git repo. That's going to give us the code that will let us create an SSH key pair easily.
I just wanted to jump in, Eric. I'm making right now a page that will eventually go up on our webpage, but for now, people can see it in the repository for the webpage that has all these instructions with screenshots. So if folks see this and see anything wrong, let me know.
Cool. Yeah, we will give a link to that as well. Okay. So it'll have that little spinning cloning widget up there for a second, but when you go back to your file browser after you've cloned that repo, you should see this Innovation Summit Utils folder. Go ahead and press on that. And then there should be a file in here.
Apparently it was a failed clone. Mine worked nicely.
Oh, okay. Let me try again. Maybe there's just some something weird going on.
Make sure you don't have any spaces in your file path, like at the front or the back. Sometimes that can be there.
Okay, let's see.
I have also had problems with lookalike characters, specifically copying, I think, from Zoom chat to the terminal. So hopefully that's
People are asking about SSH or HTTPS. I use the HTTPS link when I was cloning the Innovation Summit one, and it worked for me.
Yes. Yes. So public repositories, you can use the HTTPS link. For private repositories, you must use the SSH link. All right, let me try a different. Also failed.
We have a lot of people joining you in a failed clone, so everybody feel some camaraderie. We'll get through this.
That's so weird. Okay, let me try one more thing.
I think when I did this before and just now it worked for me, I selected the check mark that was just download the repository instead of clone it.
Okay.
So
also yours has the .get at the end of it, and I was just using the one I put in where it's just the whole repository HTTP.
Okay. Let me try that.
Weird.
Interesting. Ty, where did you clone it to?
I cloned it to the home, but one of my suspicions is that you have a folder in there and you might need to go delete the empty folder. It might not be liking that you already have a folder in there.
Yeah.
Hang on, I see what the problem is. So Eric, you're trying to clone it into the data store folder. And that's the fuse mount. So go back to just CD into the Jovian directory.
Okay.
Yeah, so as you guys can see in Eric's terminal, it says data store and then iPlant home. So the folder on the virtual machine you're using called data store is a network mount. And so that network mount has some different permissions under the covers. And if you try to do a git clone into that directory, you're going to run into some weird networking issues. So let's give it one more try, Eric, in your personal folder, or just in the home Jovian folder.
Okay.
Actually, home Jovian data store should be fine. That way you can see it in the path.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that did work.
So if you go in, I guess it's the iPlant folder is the one that it becomes like that network mount.
Okay.
And this is specific to just working in this kind of discovery environment.
Okay.
All right, let me give a little context to the people who are watching. So in the discovery environment, you have two places. It's sort of connected to two big file systems. One, there's an internal file, which is sort of your stuff, and it's private to you. And when you run out of space, you privately run out of space. And then separately, there is a data store. And that data store is sort of intended to feed your virtual machine data, but not really meant to have your machine feed it data. It's a data store, not a data repository, really. And so if your code gets confused and tries to send data to the data store says, we don't really want that, thank you. And we'll say no. And so you just have to change your paths so you're saving to the folders that you have access to and that you're allowed to save to. And here, obviously, Eric's been doing lots of stuff that has made his machine a little confused.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do you want to unshare and I will just show people what it looks like?
Yeah.
You can just go fix it, try to fix it on the side real quick, and I'll take over.
Perfect. Yeah.
Oh, you're not stressing out in front of everybody. Cool. All right. So here we are after I have just run that code. So on the side over here, I opened that folder. It had a Python code for me. I just double clicked that and it just opened this Python code for me. And this Python code has not been run yet. So I'm just going to go up here and hit play and it's going to run. I'm going to give it a little bit of information here. My username is Tough, and you can leave these blank if you want. But the nice thing about this is that this is how you get credit on the contributor page. And now it has created my public key for me. And that we're going to now copy that whole thing. And we're going to go over to GitHub. And over here in my personal user profile, I'm going to go down to settings. Here, I'm pausing for a second so everybody can see where I'm at. Let me cancel that for 1 second again. Up here, my user profile, down to my settings, pull up my settings. And now I'm going to go over here to SSH keys. And I'm going to say I have a new one. Oh, it was behind everybody's faces. New SSH key right here at the top. Zoom in right there. Boom, new SSH key. Boom, okay. Title. Hack 2023. I should be hack 2023 2, because I had one from last time. So I'm just giving myself a new one. Right here at the bottom, I'm going to add that SSH key. I'm going to have to authenticate with mobile. So I'm just going to the GitHub app, and it's going to just come up and ask me for the digits that I'm seeing on that screen. Just confirm that it's me. And key is invalid. Let's see what I did here. SSH key. Authentication key. There we go. I hadn't actually copied and pasted it appropriately into the thing. All right. Eric, how are we doing? You ready to take back over? You want me to?
Yeah. Let me try to clear up any confusion for anyone still.
No worries. If you need more time, I'm happy to keep
clone.
going. I just checking in.
It should be all good now. Just for anybody that can't clone, go to your file browser on the top left here, and click this file icon as many times as you can until you see data and home. This way you'll be in your root directory. This is where you're going to need to be before you can clone that repository. So once you're here, again, you'll see data, home. You shouldn't see any file paths right here to just be this slash. Then you can go to your Git extension, click clone repository, and paste that that URL in. So, okay, cool. Yep. So we got some people. Yeah. So, yes, I will. So again, everyone, just make sure you are in the folder with data and home. Again, just click on this folder as many times as possible until you get to root. And then, yep, cool. So then I'll go through what Ty went through one more time. Okay, so this looks like it's working for some people now. That's great.
If you're still, when he finishes this one little last bit, if there are still people struggling, we can pull out a breakout group and work with people in a separate room to help you get caught up. Okay, so don't panic. We obviously want you to know how to do this. This is why we're doing it over and over and over again and doing it slowly. So please just stick with us. We're going to get everybody where they need to be. Yep. How nice is it that we're not doing this during the hackathon?
Cool.
Yeah, I think Elsa had a comment last week that I want to circle back to. Like, we did it last week so that when we did it the next time, it will go a little bit more quickly. And now we're doing it this week So then we do it next time, it will go a little bit more quickly. And so there will be some struggling along the way, but it looks like folks are starting to get it figured out, and we can post links to the steps that Elsa is creating. And like Ty mentioned, we'll have a breakout room set up here shortly for folks to join if you need help.
Okay. When you open, okay, so before I get to this page, everybody should see this Innovation Summit Utils folder now in their file browser. And okay, questions about the kernel. Choose the Earth Analytics Python kernel.
Yes, you should do that. It's the default, but it still makes you choose the first time.
Yep. And the kernel can be selected in the top right here. Okay. So inside this Innovation Summit Utils folder, you should see this configure GitHub SSH notebook file. So go ahead and double click that, and it should open and look like this. So I'll make sure everybody can get to that point. If anyone has any trouble getting to here, if anyone's having trouble right now, let us know. Okay. All right, so once this notebook is open, you can run it two ways. One, with this play button here on the top toolbar, or pressing, you can click on the cell to highlight it, and then you can hold shift and press enter. And that will run this entire cell. Once it runs, at the very bottom, you should be prompted for your GitHub username. Make sure. Okay, cool. So Brian was able to create a key pair. Okay, so you're prompted for your GitHub username. Go ahead and type in whatever that is. Your email, and as Ty said earlier, this is really just to give your commits credit to your email. So it's nothing like authentication wise or anything like that. So it's not incredibly important, but okay. Once you input your username and email, you will see all this output. It's telling you that your SSH key pair files were saved to home.jovian.ssh. And then at the very bottom, it will show you your actual public key again. So this is a key pair. There's a private key and there's a public key. A private key you don't want to share anywhere. You don't want anybody else to see it. Most of the time, you don't even need to see it yourself. The public key, however, is okay to share, and it's okay for other people to see it because they don't have your private key. So, okay, let's make sure everybody is up to this point. Is anyone having issues getting to this point where they can see their public key output? I'll wait just a moment here. Okay. Okay, so go ahead at this point, if you see this output, and copy this entire line all the way from the encryption type, which is SSH ED25519, and then your key, and then it will be your current username, local username. So go ahead and copy that. Okay. So check. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll come back to that in just a second. Okay, so if everyone has this copied, you want to copy this, and then you're going to want to go to your GitHub. Okay, so if you're logged into your GitHub, you should see your profile settings on the right side here. So you just click on your profile picture, and then you're going to want to go down to settings. Okay, so you're in your profile settings, and on the left side, you're going to see under access, SSH, and GPG keys. Okay, and then you'll see your list of SSH keys if you have any. But the most important thing on this page is going to be this new SSH key button. So go ahead and click that. And you can give it a title. We'll call this Hackathon 23 training. And then paste that output from your Jupyter notebook into this box here. So again, all the way from the encryption type, key, and then your username. And go ahead and do add SSH key. It's going to ask for you to authenticate again, most likely. Cool. If all goes well, you will see the key in the list here. Yeah, if you have SSH keys from any old analyses, those will be, the private key and the public key were destroyed when the analysis was destroyed. Yeah, and I'll run through it again. So you can delete those, any old keys from any old analyses, they won't be able to be used again. So just to run through how to get to this page one more time. So you log into your GitHub. Once you're logged in, you should see your profile picture on the top right, or your avatar. If you click on that, then you will see this toolbar come up. This nav bar. And then you can go to settings. So it's going to be here in settings. Let's go where you're going to want to go. So once you're in your profile settings, you can go to access on the left side, and you'll see SSH and GPG keys. And then you'll see your list of SSH keys. What you're going to want to click when you get to this page is the new SSH key button here. And you can go ahead and give it a title like Hackathon 2023 training. And then for the actual key, if you don't have it copied on your clipboard yet, you can go back to the Jupyter notebook, and you're going to want to copy this entire line here. Let's go ahead and copy that. Paste it here. And then click add SSH key. I've already added this key, so it's probably won't let me add it again. But once you've done that, that should be the last thing you have to do. Okay. Cool. All right, and just to make sure, if you're still stuck on cloning or you've cloned from the terminal, The only thing about the terminal is that if you clone into home Jovian, I don't know that you can actually see home Jovian from the file browser on the left. So that might not be the best thing to do. I would say if you're still having trouble cloning, the first step is going to be to go to your file browser on the top left here, and then click this folder as many times as possible until you get to root. And you should just see data and home. Those should be the only two folders if you haven't been able to clone yet. Once you're here, then you can go to the Git widget, click clone a repository. And then clone, copy the HTTPS URL for the Innovation Summit utils. And if you're curious about how to accomplish all of this without using this file, and we try to make it easy by, there's a few different steps to creating an SSH key pair, configuring your SSH config file, adding GitHub to the IP address for GitHub to your known hosts automatically. If you're curious about how to do that, it's an important skill. You're certainly welcome to always use this file on your local computer or anywhere else you want to create a key pair. But it is useful to know how to do this from scratch. So there's plenty of resources online, or if you just want to, read through this file and you can see all the different commands you'd have to run and in which order. So
kind of hard to believe that this is the easy version, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So just a note to people that there were some questions in the comments about how in the world do we do this again? And why is this not documented? And it's just because we're a tiny bit behind, but Elser is working on an amazing document that has the screenshots to walk you through all of this. And we're going to have this up before the actual hackathon. So the day of, you'll be able to go and look at things and walk through them. You're just seeing us develop what we need for people to be able to do this the way we want them to be able to do it. So if you guys are still having problems, I think we need to move on to work on GitHub. So Elsa's going to take us through now the push-pull part of the next step. But if you're still having problems, why don't you message Rachel and she can help pull you out into a breakout room with Eric, and he can just sort of walk people through one-on-one and help them get up to speed. But anybody that feels like they're ready to move on, let's go ahead and pass it off. Well, thank Eric because he did an amazing job, and pass it off to Elsa to work on GitHub. Eric, did I cut you off before you had any last words to say? I wanted to make sure you had a last word if you wanted.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, please, if you're having issues, let's try to get those resolved right now. Go ahead and into a breakout room and we'll get everything going for you. So.
Yeah, and there's a breakout room open, so called tech support if you all want to join. But if you have trouble, let me know.
Cool. Yeah, let's get started. Yeah, just like everybody else is saying, we're of course very ambitious with what we want to get through with you guys, but we want everybody to get through it. So yeah, don't feel like we're I don't know, lagging behind or not getting enough done just because we prepared more material than we actually have time for. So yeah, I think let's go ahead. Sabelli, maybe I can show folks how to clone the data cube repository that we're working with today instead of the one from last week, so that people will be all set up when we get to that.
That would be amazing. Yeah, just the hackathon repository has everything on it.
Okay, great. So I will share my screen. Oh, sorry. I have a lot of windows open. Guys, I don't know about you, but I want to share the one that doesn't have a million tabs. Okay, here we go. Oh, now it's shared, but I can't see it. Okay, here we go. Can everybody see my SSH keys, which again, I can show to the world because this is only my public keys. Cool. So this is my GitHub account, and we're gonna go to the hackathon repository here. I'm just clicking on, this is the document that I just made, so it's got all of the steps for you all. We also have on here like the training documents from last week, and those will all eventually be up on the GitHub page that's linked to this repository. So this is a really great feature of GitHub, is that you can turn your repositories into websites really very easily. And so that's something to think about as you're working on your hackathon too. If you want to present your work as a website, then GitHub makes that super easy. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to go to the main page of this repository, which I will put in the chat. And, oh, that's the same as the one that I just put in the chat. Perfect. And we're going to get the URL in order to download this. And we are all set up with our SSH keys now. As long as you can see your SSH key that you just created today in your authentication keys here on GitHub, you should be able to do anything using SSH that requires authentication on GitHub, as long as you have permission for it in your account. So instead of selecting the HTTPS like we needed to beforehand when we didn't have authentication set up, we can select SSH instead. And this is going to use that public key to encrypt things. And so that only my Cyverse analysis that has the private key is going to be able to decrypt it. And therefore I'm the only one who's going to be able to see it. So we can click this copy button right here. And then I'm going to head over to the discovery environment. Well, sorry, I have mine open in a different tab, but I'm going to show how to get there again. I think, nope, not it. Not it, guys. I'm heading back to, I'm going to head back to my instructions actually, because the link to the discovery environment is there. So, and I'll also show you how to get that. So it's here in Get on the Cloud, GitHub Cyverse, and we've got these two sites. We've got the user site here, but also we've got de.cyverse.org, very important. So I'm gonna go over here, and initially we went here and we did the analysis and we opened up a new one here. But if I open up a new analysis now, it's not going to have my authentication. So what I want to do is I want to go over to my analyses and see this one that's running right here. If for some reason my window got closed, and then this little button with the square and the arrow in it is going to take me to that Jupyter Lab page. Okay, so I still have this notebook open. I'm going to close that, and I'm going to go back to that data store folder by clicking on the folder here. And then I'm going to head over to the GitHub extension panel here. We've got our little graph network logo, GitHub logo, and I'm going to click on clone a repository. And I'm going to go ahead and clone the DataCube repository here. So, moment of truth, everybody. Did it work? Just waiting here. It worked. Okay. And so now I have the hackathon folder here. So let's pause for a second here. All right, I want to put that discovery environment URL in the chat in case you're looking for that. And I'm going to put the SSH authentication URL for the repository in the chat in case you weren't able to find that on GitHub, but it's going to be this green code button, making sure the local tab is selected and then SSH is selected, and the copy button. So that's what will go in your little window. Can we get an idea of where folks are with that? Like, here I'm going to open up so I can see everybody. I see one thumbs up. We get like a thumbs up, thumbs down kind of symbol from you all just to see if you were able to clone that repository.
See a question about someone used the HTTPS instead of the SSH. Could you go over that point again?
Yeah, so if you use HTTPS, because GitHub, I don't want to say for like absolute sure about this, but my understanding of the current situation is that GitHub has deprecated the use of HTTPS for any kind of authentication, unless you are using a personal authentication token, which we did not go over how to do that. So you can't authenticate with your password. So you should be able to clone this repository using HTTPS, but you will not be able to push back to GitHub any changes that you make using HTTPS. So I think for the purposes of what we're doing today, that is fine. But when you are working with your repository for the hackathon, you are going to want to make changes. And so you will need to use the SSH or set yourself up with an authentication token, which again, we're not really going over. The SSH is harder to set up, but once it's set up, it's much easier to deal with. And so that is why we are going with that type of authentication. Yeah, let me show you how to delete in there, because I ran into that earlier too. I'm seeing in the chat. So let me share. Wait, is my screen still shared? Yes. Okay.
It is. It got blurry for a second, then came in.
All right. Now I'm gonna I had everybody's faces in front of it, which is always much nicer. Okay, so here I am. If I click on this folder here and go back to the main folder, I'm gonna, for my purposes, yeah, I'm gonna delete this. So you have options, right? We could go in here and rename this something like this. That'd probably be okay, and then you'd be able to clone the SSH one, and it wouldn't be trying to write over that. If you really want to get rid of it, we've got to go to the terminal. So I'll show that again. Down here in other, the terminal is this black box with the $sign. Because you'll probably notice that if you try to go in here and delete, it's like, oh, are you sure you want to permanently delete that? And then you say yes, and then it's like delete failed. So that's no good. You can go in here, we can type the command ls to list everything out, and we see all of the same folders here or directories that we see over here. And so I am going to use this command rm space dash R for recursive, that's what we use to delete a whole folder instead of a file. And F, because when you have a Git repository, there are some write protected files. And so we need the F for force option in order to delete them. Be real careful with this, guys. This is not your trash can. It's gone when you use rm-rf. And if you type something in wrong and run this command, then you could end up deleting a lot of important stuff. So I'm going to start typing the hackathon in here, and to make sure that I type it right, I'm going to press tab, and that will auto-complete for me. And then I'm going to, because I'm using the RF options, I'm going to read through that one more time really carefully and be like, okay, I'm sure that's the one. And then I can go ahead and press return. And now if I ls, that folder is no longer there. And if I'm looking at my file browser, it's also no longer there. So I could go back in here. Was that a question or a background noise?
Background noise.
Background noise. Okay. So I could go back in here, grab my, making sure I'm grabbing the SSH that starts with git@github.com and paste in here and clone again. Okay. Okay, yep, and Eric's got that written down as well. It looks like we've got some resources for the command line there. We also have an introduction to the command line on our earthdatascience.org site. So if I search for this here, then this would be the relevant file, and it's going to explain everything in a lot of detail for you all. So. But hopefully we won't need to do too much with the terminal. So I want to make sure to leave time for Sibeli. Is there other stuff that
you need to be able to push. We wanted to cover pushing back to, last time we stopped before pushing back to GitHub, and people tried it and failed, and so we just wanted to get people through that.
Gotcha.
I think we're fine delaying a little bit on the data stuff, as I'd rather get people to be able to push.
Okay. Is it okay if we create a file, and yeah, everybody should create their own repositories probably. Okay, so we call in the hackathon thing. So when you are working on your hackathon project as a group, you're going to want to make your own repository so that you all can work on it together. So I'm going to head to, there's a lot of ways to make a new repository on GitHub. I'm going to head to the home page here. And Virginia, do we have are we wanting people to put the their hackathon repositories in the ESIIL organization, or are we wanting them to have it under their own accounts?
Their own accounts.
Okay. Yeah, I always think that's good because then you guys own your own work, right? So here I am at this homepage, and one thing that I just want to show about GitHub is, if I make the screen super narrow, it's actually kind of hard to find stuff here because of the way that they built their web page. So if you're seeing something that's kind of confusing and you don't see those green buttons like mine, maybe try making that page a little bit wider. And so here on the home page, github.com, I've got this new button with the little book symbol next to it. And if I click on that, then it's going to allow me to create a new repository. You can also find this like from your repositories page. You can create a new repository. I think from your organizations, you can also create a new repository. But this is the way I usually do it. And you don't need a template for this. Do make sure that the owner is your name. if you belong to multiple organizations. And then we'll give this a repository name. So I'm going to do Hackathon Week 2 practice repository in here. Maybe I'll put ESIIL in the front of it so that I remember that later on. And then I'll put a description, practice repo for learning how to push with Git. Okay. I'm going to leave this public. If you make it private, you can still use it in Cyverse because you have your authentication. But it is nice for other people to be able to see your work. But if you do want to keep it private among your team, you can absolutely do that until you're ready to release it. And I'm going to add a README file here because we always want to have a README file so that people coming to the repository know what it's about. I usually work in Python, so I'm going to add the git ignore template for Python. You may wish to use the R one. You may wish to use some kind of a hybrid of the two that you create for yourself if your team is working on both Python and R. And then I'm going to choose a license as well. And we usually advocate for the MIT license if you just want anybody to really be able to use your work pretty permissively, and a simple license. But you can check out GitHub's page on licensing here, and also this choosealicense.com, which has a lot of information about different licenses. Okay, and we always want to, it's nice to license your work as part of making it open science, but also making sure that that your work is used the way that you want it to be in the future. Okay, so I'm down here and I can click on the green. It may be blue for you, but it will be the colorful button at the bottom right, create repository. Okay, so this is mine. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the code button and make sure I'm on local and SSH, and then click the copy button. And I can copy this into my analysis, which is one of these tabs, this one. Okay. So if I'm back in my Jupyter Lab tab, we've done this a couple of times before, so hopefully it's getting a little bit more familiar. I'm going to click on the GitHub symbol over here in the left menu. Click on clone a repository. And then I can go ahead and paste in that repository. And I can even check that it starts with github.com so that it is the SSH version. And I'll go ahead and clone that. That happens much faster because there's hardly anything in that repository. And here it is in my file browser now. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to wait for just a second for folks to catch up. Can we, if anybody has run into trouble, can you put that in the chat? And yeah, give me a thumbs up if you're ready. Looks like we've got some thumbs up. So I have a question. Should we be putting our repositories in the root folder? Well, the answer to that question, as you asked it, is definitely no, because you won't have permission to put things in the actual root folder of this image, I don't believe. However, if by root folder you mean instead this folder right here, where if you click on the folder, and so this folder right here is, if we go into the terminal, we can use the pwd print working directory command to see what it is. And this is /home/Jovian/data store. So this is kind of a home folder that we're using, but it's connected to the data store. And I have, I'm so sorry. I have 3 minutes of battery left and I just realized I'm not plugged in. So while people are finishing that up and folks can answer things on the chat, I'm gonna go do that.
Thanks for sticking with us, guys. It's a lot, right? Anybody feeling a little overwhelmed? Feeling they need to do some jumping jacks or go for a swim or something? Now is a really good time to ask questions if people want to hop in.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. All right. So hopefully I won't disappear. If I do, that's what happened. Okay. So let's see, we've got a lot of thumbs up. Okay. All right. And if you're in the spot where you're like, I have no idea what's going on, then please use the tech support room. I think that's going to be the best for that. Okay. But it does look like we have kind of a quorum here for having this practice repository downloaded. So I'm going to head in here and I'm going to make a change. I'm going to make a small change in here. So I'm going to make this a little bit more readable. Okay. So here we go. I've got this little gray mark up here. That indicates that my file hasn't been saved yet. It will be automatically saved if I click X, and I can also use the save shortcuts or the file save in order to save it. And so having made this small change, I can now head over to the GitHub tab, and this should give me some information about my repository. So the repository is not just the files that I have there. The repository is the entire history of every change that I want to keep track of. I'm going to do what's called committing those changes. And so what we can see here is that we've got a changed file here, the readme.md. I can also up here pull the latest changes, push committed changes, of which I don't have any right now, or refresh to detect local and remote changes. There's no one else working on this repository, but when you're in your hackathon groups, you're all going to be working together, right? So you do want to always make a habit of at least pressing this refresh button before you go ahead and push any changes. And then if changes come up, you can also push this pull latest changes button. I don't have any again, but if you've got multiple people working on your repository, you very well may have changes that another part of your group made. So this is a really important practice to get in the habit of. Always making sure that you're in sync, because otherwise you can create really big problems for yourself. which we can help you solve, but I think probably you will be happier if you try to make sure query is in sync with the one that's on GitHub as often as possible. Okay, so now we're over here in the changed, and you may remember from last week, I'm going to pull up a graphic. My computer's okay. Ty's moving again. Sorry, I think I froze there probably.
You're great. You're great.
Okay. All right, I'm just trying to like close some things down on my computer in case that's causing the issue. Boy.
You want me to take over for a minute? If it felt like you were getting close to the end. Did you have, how many things did you want to finish, do you think? I just want to
Yeah, I just wanted to push up. Yeah, my computer is like getting very, very slow.
Yeah.
Which is
trying to charge that battery and getting hot. Well, how about we give you a little bit of break and we maybe bring you back in a couple minutes when you're
Sure. Yeah, why don't you maybe I'll stop sharing and you can show the last little bit of this.
I think just because you have it all pulled up already, I'm going to let you come back in a couple minutes and finish that. I was just thinking maybe we could let Sibeli move on and give her little spiel about data cubes real quick. And then come back
I will
finish up the GitHub.
That sounds good. I will take a minute and like try to get my computer in better order.
Sounds great. Do you want to mute real quick? All right, everyone. So take a deep breath. We just put you through a lot. Let's acknowledge that for a second. Let's just take a second and go, wow, that was a lot, right? We meant for that to take half an hour and it took 80 minutes. So just to give you an indication that these things are just like fundamentally not that easy. There are a lot of ways for them to go wrong. That's why we're trying to do all of this so people aren't screaming at each other during the hackathon. Okay, so just be patient. You're doing great. We're going to move on for just a minute and start thinking about stage 2. Okay, so in our whole narrative arc of these these pre-hackathon sessions, it's like we want to get you into the environment so you feel comfortable. That's the most important part. That's the part we're dwelling on. We want you to be able to show up to the hackathon and do the things that you know how to do as a scientist. Okay, so that is get in the discovery environment, get this GitHub thing down, get it so you can just save files and you can just do the normal things that you want to do to be able to move on with your life. Stage 2 is that we need to interact with data. And so we've pulled together some data sets for you that are sort of geared towards the idea of floods and the theme of floods, but then expand in a lot of different directions. We want to give you a context of sort of how we want to pull those data into clouds. We're just going to think about data slightly differently in the cloud than we normally do, than we would on a laptop. So we're going to just try to get you into the philosophy, into sort of a different way of imagining data. So just given that we've done so much hands-on already today, I think we're going to let you just take it easy and listen to us, and we'll just guide you through some of these data sets and not make you do too much stuff. And then next week we'll pick up on some of the hands-on, but we'll give you a little tour of the data, how we want to think about data in the cloud. What are some of these new strategies? What are some of the new terminology? And just help give you some context for getting your head wrapped around the data. The third wave of that narrative arc is analysis. And so next week, we're gonna start working into that. What is the data and how would you access analyses to that? And a key transition point between pulling data from the cloud and arranging them in a way that an AI could understand them to make inference is you need to make them really uniform and harmonized into a data cube. And so Sibeli right now is going to give us a little bit of context and a primer on data cubes, what they are, how they work. But in the context of our overall narrative arc, I want you to think we first gave you the tools. We're going to talk about how to bring lots of data in from the web, harmonize it into something that you want to analyze. And that we want to be a cube. And that cube is now this uniform way to pass that information onto the inference step. Okay. So let me give the link to Sibeli's talk and pass it off to her. So Sibeli, you can start and I'll stick your link up in the chat in just a second.
Yeah, thank you, Ty, for the introduction. Here is the markdown. So it should have on the web page shortly because we are having some troubles with the images rendering. So you can actually see it in the markdown that I just put in the chat here. And I'm going to share my screen so then we can go through it. So are you seeing my screen now? Yeah, cool. So yeah, I'm going
Could you minimize the sidebar? I think up left of the files, there's a little arrow that I think makes the sidebar go away and makes it a little more full page.
Just
a little higher. Yeah. Oh yeah, perfect.
Yeah, that's
good.
That I can. Yeah, so yeah, I'm just going to bring a contextualization here because it's important for us to understand how data cubes are important in this context of dealing with environmental challenge and working with AI now for bringing information for stakeholders in general and that they can use for ecosystem management and also adaptation to our new future. So yeah, first of all, why data cubes? So first of all, for us to understand why we need data cubes, because when you're talking about adaptation, about mitigation and management in general, we need to take in context of what is the environment, what's the environment challenge that we have. And it's actually a complex thing between physical, chemical, and biotic factors that ultimately determine the forms and survival of any community or population. We can think about a society. But why that's important? Because if we're going to study, for example, the impacts of climate on a certain population, we need to understand the whole context of the environment that makes that that community to adapt or maybe not to bounce back. So we need to understand the topography, the soil type, whatever that makes that environment change. It's not just climate, population, but the entire environment that we have there. And we must bring all those layers into the analysis. So that's why we're talking about data cubes, bringing 100 data within that. And also in the context of AI and all those changes that we are seeing in the environment, and how can we help population to resist and adapt to the environment. So we are seeing a incredible warming. So in the last years, it's going more than we would expect. So there is a global warming coming that reflects on extreme events and several disturbances. So we have actually to take into account as well that so we are thinking on extreme events, but that there are other disturbance that came before that make that population more vulnerable to that extreme event. So we need to take account other events that might be making that population more vulnerable to the event that we are actually studying. For example, if we're studying flooding or diseases, maybe a drought or a previous drought might be affecting the vulnerability of that community. So that's why important thinking on data cube, on bringing all the information together to understand the impact of a explanatory variable into a response variable that we are going to talk within modeling topics. So, and the projections, so we have projections and we have AI to forecast how we are going to respond to that, how we need to manage ecosystems to adapt to this, to this new reality. And the projections just show us that we are speeding up towards a warmer climate, and definitely we are going to experience more catastrophic extreme events and compound effects. So how can you use like data science and data cubes to help populations to adapt to this wild future that we are seeing? So we are facing a era of revolutions. Since like the 50s. So we have like this digital revolution, then we have the data revolution that came with 2000s and is coming yet, and also the AI revolution that we are facing now. And they have a integrated whole on help us to tackle to those environment challenges that we are facing and will face more and more in our future. So now we should use what you have in terms of cyber infrastructure, as they are seeing now with cybers, to collect, store this amount of data and process data in the cloud that helps something more efficient. So bringing all those layers together and pretty much to deliver that information. So nowadays we have about like 66% of world population that is connected to the internet. So this is our new world is definitely digital, and we know that actually, but it comes together with all this cloud computing power that we have now with this data revolution. So bringing all this data into this data cube for analyzing and how we are going to extract that information that's relevant for decision making in general. So we have like data from remote sensing, national observatories, social data that's very important for us to understand that impact on the populations and how this is going to be in the future. Lots of synthetic data, so lots of data that are available in this new open science era. And this is just like to show you an example in terms of environment justice. So this was published yesterday, and it shows how we merge here air quality data with students like schools that we have across US. And this research shows that like students that are from underrepresented communities are much more exposed to air pollution. So this is a topic that we could, for example, expand in terms of within that hackathon, for example, just an example. So, and there is, as I said, our new like revolution era, that's AI era. And so now we are seeing like these large language models as ChatGPT is using, but we have lots of convolutional neural networks, deep learnings in general, deep neural networks that are helping us with several steps for using all those data in the cloud and bringing that information so they can help us like to classify, cluster, and forecast how things are going to be in the future to help us and identify outliers. What are the outliers of some patterns that we need to identify and maybe help them to adjust. And also they help us with simulations, like bringing new data, where filling gaps where we do not have data, and also help us to emulate some models that in a more efficient way. So AI came to help us, and we are exactly in the moment to bring everything together and solve environment challenge. So there is here the digital twin is the new reality that we are going. So the most cutting edge thing that can help us with that. So, but why data cubes in general? So the data cubes are arrangements or relevant data for a certain question that like arranges the data in any dimensional array to support the analytics. Because when you're thinking modeling, oh, my modeling is not here. But when you're thinking modeling, we have like the response variables and explanatory variables that we change. And for understand how these response variables, so our population, for example, are going to adapt to a range of environmental conditions, we can say like climate, soil, whatever, we need everything 100 as a paired samples to create a model, but also we need a wall-to-wall that we call like this, like entire conus representation to map the predictions and forecasting for a certain region, what you are seeing in your model and what you are going to forecast, for example. So we need that structure for creating the model, but also to make the predictions and mapping that predictions across time, for example. There is a very important aspect that we need to work in data cube creation, that is all the data. They come with different formats, so we can have vectors that are points, lines, polygons, but we have also, like, for example, the rasters that are gridded data, and they can be aligned. So here we are going to see in the hackathon that we have like those different settings. So we have the points, polygons, vectors, data that we are going to offer for you separately to think in questions, environment questions that we can thinking about using AI for that. But we have a static data cube with climate data, elevation data, hydrological data, so data that are there for us to use. And there is another non-static data cube that you are going to interact with that is dependent on your question. So what are the periods that we need for understand, for example, weather, extreme events, so you can play with to build that data cube. Yeah, and more than that, another aspect that's important to take into account when creating the data cube, and that's why you created the data cube for making analytics, is that like each sensor, each data that we have, like they will give us information in different spatial resolution, temporal resolution, and we need to arrange them. So, for example, we to think like the entire constellation of satellites that we have now that will bring information on climate, weather, ecosystem structure, ecosystem functional response, and etc. Or even, I don't know, where are our communities placed so that we can understand this interaction with our population. Yeah, each data is collected from in different orbit, so those satellites are in different orbits, and they collect data with different instantaneous fields of view, so that give us different pixel size. And we need to have that prior information for modeling. We need everything in the same size, very well arranged before going for analytics. So we have cutting edge tools that we use for that. As Ty is going to make a hands-on with you. So we have now like the VSI that process the data in the cloud, so we can access to data and just like download the data already processed. That's an amazing tool for that. And for example, these GDAL cubes that Ty is going to play with you, to play with it and together with you. So what the basic steps that we do there? First of all, we define what's your region of interest. Then we filter the data sets by dates, times that we need. We then reproject all of them to a standard geographic coordinate system that we call like the EPSG code, each one like that you use like that is or projected or not. And we have also a very important step that I said now, like that's resample every layer to a standard spatial resolution. So you have a data cube, like we have data with 1 kilometer resolution, data with 1 meter resolution. So how can we have everything together in the same resolution, like a standard, like 10 meter resolution, everything with the same size of cell. And then we save that, and that's important to bring for you, like how we are going to save that to be optimized to work in the cloud. So we have now this cloud optimized geospatial format that those tools help us to save that data in that format. So then it's better for people to carry the data, so it's easier, so you can just extract the information that you need for your question and make like everything more efficient to process on the fly. So reduce latency, there is a more stability and flexibility for the user to use, and it's pretty much more reduce the cost as well in terms of like storing and setting the data in the way that you need for your analysis. So this is just an introduction that Ty is going to go with you through the data set that we're going to offer for you. And I don't think that this is going to be today, but he's going to play a little with how to build a data cube, as it's so important for us to go forward within the hackathon. Thank you. Any doubts? Yeah, let me know, please.
That's amazing, Sibeli. Thank you. Somebody asked for a citation for that paper. I think I included the right citation, but you might check my work real quick and make sure I included the right citation.
Yes.
And yeah, thank you. Amazing, everybody. So just what I think we really wanted you to get out of that was like how cool these cubes are, but also how this is your goal, right? When you're thinking about pulling data in for your question, you need to get it into a cube, and that is like filling in all the gaps, making sure all the time and the space are aligned properly. So that should be an aspiration of yours in the hackathon with real data, is like, how am I going to take those and cube them up in a way that works? How about Open Data Cube as another format? Again, these are all great. So you can make the cube and then save it in lots of different ways. The whole purpose here is we want you to think about the data structure really well and think about what an AI or a machine learning algorithm would need to be able to just sort of understand what's going on in your data. We're going to pass it back to Elsa now that I think her computer has cooled back down and she can finish her little lesson. And then I think we're going to call it quits for the day because we just have bombarded you with tons of information. So let's go back to Elsa, finish our get thing, and then we're going to pass it back to Nate, and he will do a final just touch base with everybody on how we did, another little quiz on how people are feeling, and then we'll call it a day. So thanks everybody for sticking with us. I'm going to pass it back to Elsa.
Well, thanks, Ty and Sibeli, and thanks everybody for bearing with me with my technical issues. I'm sure this will not be either the first or the last computer copping out that happens during the hackathon. So we want to stay calm and figure out how to adjust our timelines to go along with any kind of technical problems that are having. So where was I? We were So I'm here in my Cyverse Jupyter lab. I'm on my GitHub tab over here. And I can see that it's tracking my ESIIL Hackathon Week 2 practice repository and that I've made a change to the README. And so I wanted to jump over to this graphic to give a little background on Git and how Git is a version control system. It's the one that we are using in conjunction with GitHub, which is going to host our remote repositories up here. And Git is just, you can think of it as like a really worried ant or something, because it doesn't want you to make any changes permanent that you didn't actually want there, right? And it doesn't want you to end up with any conflicts that you did that were unnecessary. So what's going on here is we've got the remote repo up here. This is referring to your repository on GitHub. So if I go over and look at this page, right, these files are in my remote repository on GitHub. It also has this track of my history here, which I can get to with this little reverse arrow symbol. And so that's all on GitHub's server. The working directory is if I'm on Jupyter Lab and I'm in my directory tree, then this ESIIL Hackathon Week 2 practice, this is my working directory here. These are the actual files that I'm working with, and I can change these files. Right. And then the local repository we can think of as being more like this GitHub tab here, where it's got keeping track of all of the changes that were made in the working directory and whether or not those are in sync with the local repository, whether they're in sync with the remote repository. And we're going to have this multi-step process in order to get changes from the working directory first to the local repo and then to the remote repo. Okay. And so because Git really wants to save you from regret in your life, it puts a lot of obstacles in your way. So in order to get your changes from your working directory to the local repo, you have to both add the files to the staging area here, and then you have to commit the changes. So this is kind of like asking you, are you sure? And I think that when we use the GitHub tab over here, I think it will actually combine those steps into one. So I can go over here and I can say, oh, well, no, I guess it doesn't. I've used other like Git extensions that do combine those steps into one. But we've got this plus button here and we can, well, maybe you can see it's really small. And I don't think I can increase that font size, but it says stage this change. So this button, this is the add button. And it's going to move the changes that I made to the README into the staging area. So now I've got nothing untracked, nothing changed, but I've got a staged file here. And then now it's going, the next step, now that we're in the staging area, is to commit it. And this is another thing that Git is really fussy about, but it's really good that Git is fussy about it, which is you always have to leave a message. And the reason that's great is because you're not going to remember, maybe even tomorrow, why you made that change and what the change was. And certainly in 3 months, nobody's going to remember. And so if you leave a good message, it means that if you for some reason need to roll back some changes or look at a previous version of the code, you'll actually be able to find the version that you want. So I'm going to say, made the title more readable, because that's what I did. You can also put a longer description in here if you would like, but Git isn't going to enforce that the way it enforced putting something in here. So if we go back here, we've got a little red box around here being like, hey, you didn't do a summary yet. And the commit button is grayed out. And then once I put the message in there, it's like, oh, I guess you can make that change. Now we're going to go down to the commit button, press commit. All right. And so now we don't have anything here, but we do have a little orange dot next to this push button, which again is very small. Let me see if I can make it bigger. I can make it bigger. Okay. So this is push committed changes. We're ahead by 1 commit. And if I go over to my repository again, we'll notice that the latest change was 37 minutes ago. So we can also see here that the changes were not pushed up to GitHub. So now we're in the local repo, we've committed the changes, and the next step is going to be to push. So we'll go ahead and press this button. And now it's successfully pushed. If I like move off of that tab and then go back, I no longer have the orange dot. And if I go to this page, I may need to reload it. But now my latest change was 1 minute ago. I can go to the history and I can see, oh, I made the title more readable. And I can even look at the difference between my previous version of this file and the current version of this file. And there's different ways that you can look at this that kind of show you more of the file. And we can click on, if we go, let's see, you go back here, I can also click on the view commit details. Oh, and that gets me into the same place. And browse files will allow me to look at all of my files at this particular point in history, right? So it's bringing me to this commit. And so all of the files should match my current commit. Right. And GitHub has a lot of tools for helping us to look through the changes and compare the changes and communicate about the changes with each other. So how are folks doing on their pushing, committing, adding, committing, and pushing?
That was amazing. Thank you, Elsa. I'm going to drag us to our conclusion so that we get people out of here in time. We have about 5 minutes left. And so I'd like to send you back to the Google Doc. And Nate has just put up a few new survey questions for us, just for us to check in at the end of this long day. So just tell us where you're at, how you're feeling, what things are working, what things are not working. We still have some time to come in and give you any skills that you need before the hackathon, and we just want to make sure we're meeting those needs. So let us know. So take a second, go fill those out, and then we'll chat about them for just a second, and then we'll send everybody on their way. Yeah, so there is a question about documentation. Yes, Elsa is working on the documentation for the stuff we went through today. Things changed a lot right before, and so we didn't give very much lead time to actually build any of that. So just give it a couple days and that should be up there. It'll certainly be up before the hackathon, hopefully before next week, because we have to run through this again next week really fast. Hopefully though, I'm seeing a lot of very confidence. So hopefully next week, it'll just take us 5 minutes, boom, 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 and we're in. But if we're not, and we need to spend more time, then that's fine too. Yeah, general advice on GitHub is commit early and commit often. This is, the same thing with coding. You often want to code small chunks into functions and patch them together. Same with GitHub, like do little, every time you do something new, a small, go ahead and push it, because then it's really easy to go back and figure stuff out if you need. Is it possible to harmonize vector and raster data? Oh, it sure is. We'll talk about that next week. We had intended to work on some of that this week, but we aren't there yet. But essentially, you take everything, get it at the same spatial projection, so everything's overlapped properly and in the right place, and then you can all grid it up in the way that you need to. So, yep, for sure. I need an address to the Slack link. Oh yes, let's get you that real quick. Rachel, do you think you could maybe give us the invite link to this?
Yeah, a note about that. We're gonna create one for the event specifically. So stay tuned. We'll get everybody added to that in time for the hackathon and get groups and everything set up there. So you will get all that information soon.
We have a nice compliment from Kelly. Thank you so much. She says these trainers have been very helpful and that she's gotten a lot out of them. And thank you for organizing. We appreciate it. As you can imagine, it's a lot of work. We're sort of like when you TA'd and could just stay one step ahead of your very bright students. This is our daily experience these days. So thank you so much.
I don't tell them.
Okay, did everybody get a chance to go into the document and make all the comments that they wanted? Okay, Nate, do you want to say our parting words?
I don't really have anything else to add other than great job to Elsa, Ty, and Eric and Sibeli for leading the sessions today. Again, these things can be frustrating when we're trying to do them live, and inevitably mistakes will happen. We hope that through these trainings that they will help make the steps that you need to follow to get started engaging with the hackathon a little bit more smooth. We are going to ask you to read a little bit about what are called FAIR and CARE data principles, and we'll have more to say about that, I think, at the end of next week's training as a little bit of homework that we'll like you to do prior to the hackathon, but we'll have more to say about that next week. I think that there are some links to those readings in the Pre-Hackathon webpage, but for now, don't sweat it. We'll have more to say about that next week. I don't know, did I miss anything? Do our team leads want to add anything before we sign off for the day?
Just thanks for sticking with us. I know how hard it can be sitting online.
Really
for 2
great
hours.
point in the chat, Ty. Sorry to interrupt you,
No,
but
please, go ahead.
yes, you should shut down your analysis.
Yes.
Should we show that real quick?
Yes. Yeah. Eric showed that last time. I already shut mine down. Does one of the leads have a?
And
Have it
I
still
can
open?
shut mine down.
Okay.
and
Thanks,
show.
Elsa.
Okay. All right. So I'm going back. I can close this browser. This doesn't change anything with my analysis because I could go back to this page and it would still be there. And then in the discovery environment, I can click this terminate button, which is going to shut it down. So if you do have to go back to the discovery environment main page, then it's going to be in the analyses tab. And if you're ever wondering like what all these are, you can click the button up at the top, analyses, little circle with the graph in it, and then terminate. And then yes, I do want to terminate. And now it's completed.
All right, Elsa, thanks for that quick demo and good question in the chat from, I think it was Tate. Thanks again to everybody for filling out the kind of formative assessments that we're asking you to do. Like Ty said, looks like we've got a lot of folks who are feeling pretty confident about what's been done. If you are in that not confident, please reach out to us and let us know. There will be recordings from the first day and today's sessions available soon. You should be hearing about that. We have one more day of training 1 week from today where we'll learn a little bit about artificial intelligence for earth and environmental data science and review some of the things that we've talked about over the last couple of weeks. If nobody else has anything to add, give it up one more time for Elsa, Ty, Eric, and Sibeli, our instructors today. Thanks, Rachel and Virginia, for helping keeping us organized and on track. Thanks to Chelsea and Jennifer and the rest of the ESIIL team, Earth Lab team, for being here today. And yeah, we'll see you in a week. Thanks, everybody.